sharing screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
See that?
Okay. Okay. This begins with the review of the minutes from January 22nd, 2020. Did anybody have an opportunity to review those and have any questions relating to those minutes?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Under old updates, I've added the capital budget items for 2020 under the long-range plan. I'll let Mr. Traska take us through this spreadsheet. You want to begin on the projects or the totals, Tim?
Start the totals, then we'll just run through each one that goes back to the total sheet.
Okay.
So if you're looking at, approved for 1920, we're in progress with that one still. So we go to 2021. We have roof work, 824,000, HVAC, 310. We don't have anything in parking lots because we pulled a lot of the parking lot stuff for next year into this year, because that's, you see our big number for this year is 320. And our projects, which is things across the district, are 565.
Dude.
So, if anybody has any question about that, we'll just go through each one real quick, and then if you have questions, you can stop me anytime.
I just want to make sure that they weren't being.
Going into 2021, we're looking at 2 roof projects, one at Walter Miller, Area B, which is at the rear of the building. And then we have the facilities and purchasing areas D and F. D and F is the section over top of like where the warehouse is. And then F is over where the facilities offices are.
How is it possible we don't have a high school roof that needs to be done?
Yeah, how'd that happen?
Well, I mean,
That's Tim's office.
well, we go by where the most active leaks are, and this is the 2 locations where the most active leaks. We did a lot of the high schools in the past 2 years. If you look at the top of replacements, areas, the B areas and the C, H, and K, they're all.
I was just being sarcastic.
Yeah, you don't have to explain that, Tim. That's all right.
So they're the next 2 sections of roof. HVAC. Now I put in we're looking at the next big HVAC project we're looking to do is a Maple Point, and that would be the replacement of the univents and controls. I split it over 2 years. We're able to do it. I didn't want to do it all in one, so I put it over 2. So I was afraid of, if we get into the project and we weren't able to get it done over the summer, we'd be stuck. So I figured put it into 2 sections. We know over 2 summers we'll get it done. Steve, you brought up the last time though when we looked at this, is there a potential for a Giza here? And I did bring it up with Reynolds, but it's something we didn't have time to really look more into. So what I'd asked to do is to leave the money I asked here, and we wouldn't spend it until summer of 2021. So that gives us time to think if we wanted to do a Giza project. Because one of the things in that building that is original are the windows. They're single pane windows. So that's something, Maple Point would really do.
All the windows are original, single pane?
Single pane from when you bought the building.
When we built the building. We always
building.
Yeah, someone who had it before us, wasn't it? Like
we leased it to another company for a couple years.
So single pane original windows.
And they must have put all single pane windows in.
Yeah. So I mean that's something, like I said, we could allocate the money now, but I'm not going to spend it right away. Typically the HVAC projects, it's not until maybe November, December that we start the specifications for them. And then we do the bidding in January, February. So we have plenty of time to think about.
So you just want the money in the budget, is what you're telling us?
Yeah, let's put it there, and then like if I don't spend it, it just doesn't come out. You know what I mean?
Right.
It'll just stay.
Because I definitely want that investigated to see if there's any additional savings we can reap there. Plus, if we can tie energy to it, even if we get back, a couple $1,000s a year.
I agree.
It's worth it if it doesn't cost us nothing to go that way.
No, I agree. It's just the timing of having everything shut down. We just have time to get Reynolds in.
I understand.
So then if we go to the next tab, parking lots, we don't have any because we moved a lot of those over into this current year. So all this work's being done this summer. Then our last tab is our projects tab. And in our projects tab, I moved a lot out to try to get us down to the 1.7 and 1.8 million that we were looking to have under capital projects. New PA system at Fertibar. The locker replacement at Maple Point, I mean, we've been promising them that for a long time. It needs to be done. Those lockers need to be replaced. It's a hiding spot for kids. Plus, we're going to move those into the hallways. It'll create more space in the building if we want to create more classroom space. Replacement lockers at Sandberg is something else we're looking at too. They're original metal lockers that are really beat up. And then office upgrades at Schweitzer. is something that we were looking to do too. So
You got a PA system here for the high school?
no, that's Fertile Bar.
Bar.
No. I'm looking at 21, 22.
Yeah, it's $150,000.
They didn't update the PA system when they did the renovation in 08?
I guess not. It needs to be updated.
How do you like those apples, John?
You really want me to comment?
He did that on purpose.
Yeah, so like I took a lot of things out of 2021 column, just threw it in 2022, but they're going to push you out more because we're not going to have 1.4 million next year for all this stuff. So, as the year progresses, we prioritize, what systems are still okay, what can we live with, what we can't.
The cafeteria upgrades. I thought we were working with, I know they're pushed off again. I see that. I thought we were working with
Aramark.
Aramark to do some type of help on those things, or am I wrong? I remember some type of discussion about that.
At Sandberg or across the board?
I thought it was across the board.
I thought it was across the
Yeah.
board.
Okay, I haven't had this discussion
I
yet.
thought-
I can talk to him. I can talk to Matt about it and see what kind of money they're looking to give us.
I have had initial discussions with these guys about that, but I don't think there was $400,000 that was available in there. It was small, much smaller projects, I think, that were being discussed that they could handle.
Tim, why don't you talk about what Aramark did do for us at Pequesing? Because I think the kind of work that Aramark's talking about is the structural work associated with the actual kitchens itself, where you may be talking more about the physical room, like Sandberg wants that entire space. Remember we were there, Steve, with the committee, and Principal Kelly was showing us.
Yeah. I remember now.
Aramark's not doing that kind of work. Aramark's doing like the lines and improving the lines and stuff like that.
When it said cafeteria, I just thought kitchen.
Yeah, if I recall, the conversations with Aramark had more to do with exactly that, moving traffic patterns around, like probably moving steam tables around to make flow through the cafeteria better.
Serving line stuff.
Yeah, but they did talk about improved equipment.
Steve, you're right. I mean, I can't pull it right to mind, but
Neither can I.
But they did do equipment. They did do that type of work already at Pequesing, and they will do that in other cafeterias. But the stuff that we have on our list here is more the bigger structure of the cafeteria, physical.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we have, let's go back to the totals just to review. We have 1.7 in the budgetary total for the 2021 budget. I think I'm carrying 1.8 in the actual line item in case one of these goes up a little bit. And you can see that as you look at the out years, we 1.8 really doesn't do it justice. There should be more money in that budget, those line items to move some of these projects to the fore. But we just keep pushing, kicking the can down the road because of the budgetary constraints.
And they're going to continue. And that's where I envision, at least me personally, that we're going to have to start using our reserves in those areas because at the rate we're going, there's never going to be enough budgetary increase to tackle some of these projects. I just don't see it happening. And we may have to start actually using those reserves for not operational, but for these one-time infrastructure improvements. Might be something we might have to consider down the road.
Don, isn't there $11 million in capital in the fund balance assigned for capital projects?
as we talked the other night about what was earmarked and what wasn't, and I recall about that
11,850 or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, Steve, I have an idea on that, those capital improvements, but we'll wait till later.
Not a problem. Okay.
Okay, I have an idea.
No problem. Thank you. Did we lose Don?
I think we may have. No.
Still there.
You guys still there?
We're here. You there?
We're here.
Yeah, I
We've
got
been
kicked
here.
out. I clearly I got kicked out, like for bad behavior.
Yeah.
I've been having a little bit of internet trouble all day here, so I apologize. So if we go back to the agenda, did anybody have any ending discussion as it related to the projects that are in process or will be in process as we move forward for next year in the capital long range plan?
I just want to hear for myself, what was pushed off that you would have really have liked to have done this year? I just want to know for my own personal benefit.
I think I covered everything that I really want to get done is in there now.
Okay.
All right.
You're good.
All right.
So that's roof, HVAC, your parking lots.
Yep. And then, like we said, we have to do some upgrades in the buildings. We spend all this money and then everybody says, well, where is it? And you can't just say it's on the roof. We have to, lockers are going to, that'd be a big thing. People are going to see them. It's a good upgrade.
One of the discussions that I had with Tim, and this only started this week, so I don't want to put him on the spot, but if the price of oil is down as low as it could be this summer, maybe this is a summer where we take some money out of the fund balance and do some paving, because you're going to get it could go pretty far potentially this summer with the price of oil where it's at.
Well, we're all for being proactive. I don't think anybody will disagree with that, but where are you going to fit it in the budget at?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It would have to come from the fund balance.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's just because the price might be just so good that you might not get this kind of pricing again. But we'd have to do a little bit of investigation on that.
If it's advantageous, you'll put it out to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Take a look at it.
Okay. All right, then as we move along then to the next item on the agenda is the High School Media Library Center. And if you guys recall, we had a couple of conversations about this, and one of them was that I thought that this had been brought back to the board and had already received your approval, and you guys had explained to me that was not the case. So I've asked Mr. Rochot to review these documents with you tonight as it relates to what has been done. And I guess the first question is we'd have to ask Mr. Traskey is, has the rehumidification project, has that done what it's supposed to do so that we could continue to move forward with the library renovation?
The project's just finishing up. We have a engineer going in actually tomorrow to do his punch list. We'll know more after that, but I expect all the equipment to work as designed. So
not to cut you off, Tim, but I do know that 2 of your mechanics were already trained on it. It was fired up on site, and they were trained on it already. So it is operational. Just it hasn't been handed over.
right at the finish line right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue's still going to be, we won't know until we get into a humid situation, otherwise it's but to clarify, Don, it wasn't, if I recall, wasn't so much that we just kind of pushed it off because we had concerns that we didn't want to invest in a new library if we couldn't get the humidification under control.
Correct. That's exactly right. That's a better way to put it, John.
Yeah, and I think that's the only thing that was restricting us from releasing the funds to do that. I don't think anybody had a problem with the project.
Correct.
We do that project and that place still gets wet.
Yep. All the electronics you were talking about putting in there, making it a data hub, and we still got water floating around.
It just, we're retrofitting an old building. We understand what it is, but if it was done right, it should work.
Correct.
The question is do we take it on faith that what was designed is going to do the job, or do we wait and see if it actually does the job? That's where I'm at.
And that's kind of where I was at too, since I brought up let's see what it does. But now we're back to, do we move ahead this summer with the renovation? And we don't have actual physical data coming back that we've got the humidity under control. I'm still.
Let's let Joe give the presentation, and we'll talk about that.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start off with the PowerPoint. It's really just rehashing it from last time we met, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page. All right, hold on. Not going too quick. Sorry. All right, this didn't upload correctly because there's picture missing. All right, so on this first slide, it's supposed to be a picture of the whole library, center, the first floor, the center, and the where the stacks and stuff are at. If you go to the next slide, that's the second floor of the library. Okay. If we go to the next slide, this is the blown up center area. Okay.
Is this current configuration?
So no, wait, let me get there. So this is what it would be if we went through with the project. If you go to the next slide, that's what it's like now. Okay, so all of them cabinets are gone. The columns are gonna stay there because they're structural. Also, I think it's nice because it kind of it forms the center at that point as a focal point. So that would come out. If you go to the next two slides, there are also different pictures of the first floor, so you can see what we have currently.
Hey, Joe, can I interrupt you a second?
Sure.
Can you go back to the pillars there?
Yes.
I thought they were, just jog my memory. I thought they were coming out because I recall asking that question, if they were structural or not.
No, the pillars were, no, they were never coming out. I don't know. I mean, I can talk with Tim around that, but we never at any point thought to bring them out. We actually did the outlay around those because we thought they would, they would add a little something to the room.
I'm asking because I know I asked about that. It seems odd that I would have asked unless that was proposed to take them out.
Yeah, no, I mean, let me look through my stuff again, but as of right now, no, I don't believe they would be coming out.
Okay, moving on then, fine.
And John, if we thought about taking them out, I'd make sure they weren't structural.
Yeah.
We find out soon enough, eh?
Yeah, you'd be the least of our worries.
Okay, so this slide is also another picture of the first floor, how it is today. If we go to the next slide, it actually is a blown out future state of the first floor. As you can see, we're actually not going to keep the stacks up to the ceiling anymore. We want to have line of sight now. So basically, all these squiggly bookcases on the left-hand side, they're actually approximately like 4 foot high or whatever. So you can actually stand at them and converse on the other side. So there's nothing that will be screwing up the line of sight. We're also going to be putting a what you would call like a cafe type area. Basically, all it's going to be is someone, if they bring food or whatever, that's where we would want them to go eat at. So it's not out, in the main area. Obviously, you're not supposed to bring food or drink into a library, but that really, that doesn't work. Any library you go to, everyone walks in with bottles of water and stuff like that. But we're going to try and keep it to one area so it doesn't become an issue. If you go to the next few slides. Does anyone say anything?
I did. I said that's not the Neshaminy Library I remember. You're encouraging talking and you're encouraging eating in that library. That's nuts.
Well, a library is not a library any longer.
Obviously.
Yeah. So the next two slides, like I said, are current state. As you can see, all the stacks are to the roof. There's really no kind of interaction at all. Go to the next slide. This is actually the circulation area. This is where the librarians are going to set up shop. So instead of being in the center as they are now, they're actually going to be off when you go through the entrance into the library. If you do an about face to the left, they're going to be right there. So they can still have line of sight throughout the library, make sure nothing's going on, but they're not taking up a vital part of the library in the middle. You go to the next slide. That's what it looks like now. So that's where the circulation desk will go. So that's where the 4 librarians will now be housed. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to jump up to the 2nd floor. On the 2nd floor, we'll get to the current state. But right now, there's one part that's completely open. Then there's one part that has a bunch of stacks on it. Again, to the roof, no line of sight. So what we're looking to do is make 2 classrooms basically up on the top with with loft walls, which basically will help with the sound from entering into the other learning area. And in the center will be completely open. You could have collaborative stuff in there. If someone's being bad in the class or whatever, you can throw them out there and have them do work by themselves, that kind of thing. So there'll be area in between the 2 so we don't have lessons basically overlapping each other. If you go to the next slide, this is what it looks like now. There's nothing, like, it's literally, you can't even see the back wall. So all this would come out. Next slide, please. This is the area. Now, we had a book fair going on when I did this, but usually there's nothing here. This is where they would usually do their AP testing. And then they have to set up tables and all like that, where it would be there. And we would have tables that were like makerspace type tables, where you can either sit by yourself in a classic traditional row, or you can put them together in pods, and and then the kids can talk. If you go to the next slide, this is actually the circulation area detailed, just with how the desks are going to be, what it's going to look like. So before any questions, let me throw a little bit more information your way, and then we can go from there. All right, excuse me. So the previous price that we had come in with was $215,009.16. Since that was a year ago, things obviously do go up, but I was able to basically keep it to a minimum. It raised up $9,000, which is really only 5% of the total cost. The installation delivery pricing stayed the same. I made sure the installer has COVID-19 procedures that they will follow as they are in the library. Also, I wanted to, I'm not pushing anything, but I want to lay it out there and give you the truth. No one's ordering anything right now. If we're going to do it this summer, then now's the time to get the PO in. I want to be first in line. And I was assured that if I was still basically a first in line, it would be 5 to 7 weeks lead time. It would go to our installer, and we could probably do like a mid-July, early August install. Another thing is, and this just might be me, but it would actually be really nice if we could get this done and have the kids come back to a brand new IMC, which is now what it would be called, after basically this year. It's been, it's been trying for everyone, especially the kids. So if we can bring them back to something brand new and just hip, I think that would be really beneficial for us.
Joe, I have one question for you. Since you said no one's doing anything right now, no one's ordering,
Correct.
does that get us a discount on anything?
Yeah, why didn't the price come down?
Yeah, no, that does it. Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to them, but I doubt that. I highly doubt that, because I actually got the installation and delivery price. They actually were to up them, and I got them to stay the same, because I know that's mostly labor. I know they can do stuff there. With the margins, like I said, I'll go back to them and see what I can do. Being in the state that we are, So I will go back and I'll get back to you guys, see if I get any movement on the price.
And I hear your point about it would be nice for the kids to come back to that. But I guess my concern is, does the work we just did, is it going to work, or are they going to come back to puddles and humidity issues?
Right. I hear that, Marty, and I think potentially, it would be better served that we would take some readings during the summer before we decide to move this forward, to make sure that the work as designed is working before we plow more money into this and be more embarrassed than we need to be.
Who would,
We don't need to be embarrassed at all.
who would be, I mean, say we went ahead and then we still had an issue. Who would be responsible for the remediation at that point? Would we have a cause against the company that did the project, or how would that play out?
It would depend why it wasn't working. If it was because of workmanship or misinstallation, then yes, we could go back to the company. If it's something that it wasn't designed right, there might even be an option that we could go back to the engineer at that point.
Well, I would hope if it turns out it's not designed right, but I'm sure they would fight that out forever.
But the problem is we
That
have
would
a
go to
new,
litigation.
the problem is we have a new section that isn't completely functional at that point in time, as we're fighting it out with the engineer or whoever else though. That's my concern.
I get it.
Well, what we could do though is we could actually have either we could basically have another contractor come in and fix it, and then whatever that cost would be, we would have to pay that, but we could probably get that back. If what went on with Hirschberg, if it or the engineer, if that worked out, then yeah, we could actually get that repaid.
The only reason the board's being so cautious here, Joe, is because of the history of that little part of the building.
Mm-hmm.
It's been such a problem, and I think the board's been right to be cautious. But I also, like Marty said, I also hear you on, it'd be nice for the kids to come back to something all brand new too. So
I could tell you one of the issues I had with it in our walkthrough is, the rotunda there with the skylight
Mhm.
and the way the ductwork came in, the air patterns. I had some issues with how that was designed. It's been that way since the building was built. Now we've put in dehumidification, which, Tim shared me with the design. It's pretty straight up. I have no issues with that, other than the fact that we have to do that. I hear you. It'd be great to get this done. But the whole point of pushing it off in the first place was to get the equipment in and see how it worked in real life, through a season. I'm still stuck.
So I got a question for you guys then. Okay, let's say we do that, we put it off. What happens if we actually can't find any kind of readings or like we can't do anything with it because just the weather isn't there? It's not that humid. We're putting this off another year or two, and we're back at square one, and we might be paying exorbitant more in the cost.
It's a valid point. It brings us back more or less where we're at. And I considered that with the weather we're having right now in the spring,
Hey, Don,
Yes, sir.
what did we do with the money for this when we postponed it? Did we leave it in the budget, or it still needs to be added to the budget?
This would have to be added to the budget because, unless it was in the 18-19 budget, 19-20 budget, you'd have to contract these by June 30th. Otherwise, it would expire, go back to the general fund, the fund balance, and then you'd have to use this from the fund balance next year.
It's in the current 19.
I think it's in the current. I think the money for this purchase of furniture is in the current budget right now. I believe I have $225,000.
The 1920 budget, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question for the board then, this is my opinion, is whether or not we take a leap of faith or not. That's
For what it's worth, I see no reason for the dehumidification equipment not to work. Now, Joe, you said something about it had a test run already. I mean,
It was fired up just to make sure it was operational, but nothing was grabbed off any kind of readings or anything. Basically, just to go over with our guys what to do.
So we know it turns on.
We know it. Yes, we know it turns on and it fires up.
All right, well, that's
So,
nothing for us.
I got a question, guys, because I'm the newer guy on the facility. So if my understanding is, we've had a history of this having excess of moisture in this part of the building.
Yes.
And just me, wouldn't common sense dictate that we should have a confirmation that there's no longer moisture before we drop $225,000 on furniture?
not just furniture, Paul, electronics.
Electronics.
Okay, even better.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to, it seems like a common sense approach that if historically it's been moist, and we do not have a confirmation that that has been taken care of, and we want to invest all this money, and I understand timelines and things of that nature, it's important. But I mean, if we're going to put all this money in electronics, especially, let alone furniture, where hint of moisture can develop mold, people have allergies, you can ruin electronics. Don't we owe it to everybody to make sure that that is in fact dry?
And I agree with you 100%, Paul. But Joe did bring up an interesting point. The conditions over the last 2 to 3 summers have been extremely wet and humid, where the problems we had in the last 2 years, we didn't have 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But on and off that part of the building has had an issue. What I want to know is if we waited another month, would we get enough runtime on the system to see if it's actually performing to specification and still give us enough time to launch the project? How does everybody feel about that?
Tim, do you remember if they gave you, well, this is a terrible question to ask. Do you remember what the design was for it, what the delta in the humidity was?
No,
Yeah.
off my head.
Like 5%, something that we could tangibly put a finger on and say, here's what we got going in and here's what we got going out for a month run, even not taxed with outdoor conditions.
I mean, I can talk to the engineer about that tomorrow.
I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, I can give you all the data you want. It's still going to matter whether it tells us anything, because the system itself isn't being taxed.
Well, here's a question. I mean, the company that was utilized, do they have, I guess, a track record of proven results that can at least be taken into consideration, that, they've done it at other places with historically, similar occurrences, and that they've been able to eliminate it?
So
Like a
I
reference.
actually,
Do we have references of previous jobs that they did that the people have been extremely happy with, and we can kind of utilize that information in terms of discussing a leap of faith about it being okay if we can't get the correct readings in time?
The engineer we use, Consolidated Engineers, we've used them before I even got here. They've always done a good job for us. I didn't talk to them about other jobs they did just for dehumidification, but they do all our mechanical work for us, and they've been around for a while. So
And they tend to do really good work, correct?
yeah, I have confidence he's
Okay.
a very thorough engineer and he does good work.
It's good that he does good work, but we're just not sure it's going to do what we need it to do yet, because we haven't had.
But we paid him a lot of money too, so it better do what it's gonna do, what he says it's gonna do.
Well, it better, but if it doesn't, but Joe was saying that we could probably get somewhere else. How much do we want to do probablys?
I mean, if we want to wait through May and June to see what happens, and if the weather heats up, we get some humidity and see how it works. I don't see a problem with doing that. I think it would be a smart idea to wait and see, just make sure it's working right.
So what's the concern about doing like Steve said, I guess holding off an additional month? What seems to be the concern about that? I guess
So I actually have a question. Since there's no kids that are going to be in the library, are you going to get true real life readings? Because that's not going to be how it's going to be in the library.
That library was sweating in the summertime.
Yeah.
And when it was unoccupied, it was developing the
Okay.
Right.
So, I don't think the bodies are going to make a difference.
Back end was a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Marty, could you weigh in on what Paul just said?
I thought I just did.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm just not comfortable moving forward till we have a little more data, whether the system's still working the way we want it designed. I mean, we have issues elsewhere with, dripping in the ceilings and some elementaries that we've had over the last couple of years. With electronics being in there, new furniture, I just have a concern. Yeah, it's great to have it ready for the kids, but if we have to have it ready and then tear it apart, we're going to look like morons.
Well, also keep in mind, we have electronics in there right now. Even during all this humidity problems that we've had computers sitting in there.
But we're going to have new stuff, and we're investing money in it, Joe.
I get that, but what I'm trying to get across is that the electronics were not they were not broke or anything like that because of the humidity that we had before. So basically, what I'm saying is like that. Take the electronics out of it because they're made to live through that. Is it the best? No, but they are made to live through something like that. That's why we have the computers that are there now that have not had any issues with them. So just to put that out there, just keep that in mind.
We asked the furniture people, like, what would be the drop dead date to order in order to have it ready by the start of school? Just so we know what our window is.
I can find it out.
Then we can, let's look at that date, see what they tell us. If they say, well, we can deliver it August 1st and have it ready for you by September 1st. Well, then we know we have until, sometime in June to make the order,
Guys, I think what I'm hearing the board say is that they want to wait until they have some type of assurance that the humidification process is working. I think we could wait. We're not really sure we're coming back to school in the fall as it is right now. So let's not preempt this. If someone said the dirty four-letter word, which was mold, if you bring furniture in there, new as it is, and you let it get wet and you can't get it dry, then you've wasted another $200,000. I think it's better just to wait, and I think that's where the board's trying to lead us to.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to wait on that.
I agree, but I would still like to see us make an attempt at getting it done. So. And not wait until next year.
I'm not ruling that out.
Okay.
All
right.
I think we move with caution.
Okay.
We need more data.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the bus purchase for next year. We have Mr. Cryers here this evening, Mr. Traska, and Mr. Risso to talk about our bus replacement program and what that means for the 2021 school year. Budgetarily.
Who
wants to take the lead?
You see, we're looking to buy 10 buses. We upgraded the size to 81 because we know of crowding issues we've had this past year, especially this past year. So we believe the 81 passenger buses will alleviate a lot of that. We're also looking to get one replacement of one 30-passenger wheelchair bus. The prices are here. This is the schedule we're trying to keep to that we put in place, I guess, 2 years ago. So this also talks about $195,000 we're going to get back from the grant that the state's given us from the EPA. So if you have any questions, we can probably answer some of them if you had any.
Hey, Don, you spoke about Tuesday night about the fact that some of that state money is going to be redirected. Would any of this transportation money be redirected?
No, this is totally separate from that. This is a specific grant, and this grant that we achieved requires us to get 10 of these older buses off the road. So what this is doing is it is meeting a minimum requirement for us on the trade-in value of these older buses. instead of taking them to market and trying to either auction them off or selling them for scrap, we're gonna take them off the road to scrap them, and the EPA is gonna give us $195,000 for the 10 of them.
Which would be more than what we would get for them if we tried to sell them.
If we
Yes.
did trade-ins or anything like that, they'd be around $2,500, $3,000 a bus.
Okay.
You know, this is, I really think, a decision that the
Finance.
Finance Committee needs to make. I mean, I don't think anybody on this committee is going to deny the fact that we should stick to the schedule. We would all like to stick to the schedule. The problem is after Tuesday's meeting, there's some seriously concerns on the revenue side. It might have to be curtailed. So, Marty, am I interpreting that correctly, or?
Yeah, I mean, a number of us are there, and me and John actually sit on that committee too. I mean, our revenues are going to be down significantly because of state funding and probably taxes and a couple of different things, Tim. So I'll ask the question this way. If 10 is your wish list number, and this is for Joe too, what's your drop dead number? And I'm not saying yay or nay on it, but we have to, we're going back to look at the budget right now.
Well, Marty, one thing before they answer that, let me just say that the grant is 10 or none. I mean, you don't get the grant if you don't do 10.
Okay, so Don, if I recall right, originally, Tim, you were asking for 8. This grant became available if we retired 10 buses.
Correct.
That grant pays for those extra 2. Am I correct?
In effect, it does. Or it pays it down significantly. And if I could just add one more thing, I had this idea before, and I didn't share it with any of the other administrators, but one of the things I think we could do is stick to the schedule, because I don't want to necessarily take this line item out of the budget because of the effect it would have down the road. What if we paid for this out of this year's fiscal budget, out of the 2019-2020 budget, as we close out the fiscal year, with the excess that we think we would have from savings of operating for gas and tires and those kind of things, and then we would just leave this amount in the budget, and this is your cushion. Then this $754,000 is a cushion in your budget to absorb some of those potential revenue shortfalls that we might have, in addition to what we already saw. But it would give you an additional $750,000 just as a buffer.
All right, Don, one question I have for you on that is, the surplus that we're looking this year because of certain things weren't incurred or paid for is how much?
I'm suggesting it's going to be $2 million.
Okay. All right. And as of the other night, if a tax increase went in, we were going to have a $2.25 million deficit with a tax increase, correct? 5.5, we'll say, with no tax increase.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And that's just an option. You don't have to decide now.
No. All right. That's a good, all right.
But I do want you to know that this is on your agenda to be approved Tuesday night. And we could take it off. But I want you to know.
We're going to have to. We're going to have to do it after the May 5th or 8th meeting, whatever. After the next Finance Committee meeting.
Again, and I hate to be, I'm the one that always got to do this, but we only have 90 days from the selection letter that I received. And I received that, I want to say, I have to double check for sure, but I want to say the end of March.
You could ask for an extension.
They did put that out there that we could, because I did ask that. They said they were sticking to the schedule, though. If we were having issues, I could get back to them. But I just want to put that out there. That's all.
I think we have flexibility, especially this year. I think we'll be all right. Yeah, I think we have to wait to after the next Finance Committee meeting. But Tim never answered my question.
Well, I mean, Don Cryer, the bus is the best. If we weren't going to, out of those 10, how many would you say, like, are there just pieces of crap we have to get rid of?
And I know we're just kicking the can down the road too. Let me say that, but
If you had to be honest with you, you need 10 buses.
Yeah.
You truly do need 10 buses.
Yeah,
These
they're all-
buses, the buses that we're running now, the bulk of these are coming up on 200,000 miles. In addition, they're 14 years old this year. The bulk of them are listed as 2007 models, but they're always actually put into service the summer before. So they were actually put in service in 2006. So they're 14 years old. They're coming up on 200,000 miles. The biggest issues we're having, and we're seeing it on the older buses, we're having transmission failures. It was in the one document. You're seeing constant transmission failures, water pump failures, EGR cooler failures. We're starting to develop. I'm pretty much almost replaced a radiator in half of these buses from the 2007s. They don't even repair them anymore.
I hear you, but if you want to buy a $20 lunch and you only have $10, you can only buy $10 worth of food. So that's what we got to figure out. So, all right.
Understood.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
But I think we have to push it after the next finance committee meeting.
All right, that's fine. And that brings us to the Pearl Buck presentation by Reynolds. Mr. Damian Spars with us this evening. Damian, you still there?
Yes, sir.
You want to go over your document here with the board on Pearl Buck?
Yeah. Yes. Do you have the ability to show that?
Am I showing it now?
If not, I can show it for you. No problem. Whatever's easy.
Is everybody seeing it now or no?
No.
No.
I apologize.
If you can hear something in the background, my refrigerator decided to squeal at me during the presentation, so I'm delighted about that. Hopefully you cannot hear. Hopefully you can't hear that.
You can get another 3 years. You can get another 3 years out of it.
Can you see it
I
now?
know. I just keep kicking it.
We got your desktop. There we go. Now you're up.
That looks great. Thank you. So, what I want to talk about is what we looked into at Pearl Buck, which is really a series of maintenance projects. This isn't a renovation. It's no programmatic changes where we're changing the learning environment in terms of changing a library into a media center or reconfiguring classrooms or really even reconfiguring the front office. As you recall, some time ago, we put into Pearl Buck the security entrance. And so what we're looking at is a bunch of maintenance upgrades. And when we go down through here, you'll notice you won't see things about the offices, the library, and really not a lot about the gym, cafeteria area, or the kitchen. There's a couple things, but not anything major. There's a little bit on the stage and a couple other things. And really what's at the bottom there and the end game for this is, if you look at really basic needs, that line item number 2 about the pneumatic controls, and Mr. Allen can probably talk about this a little bit if he wants to, but those controls are old pneumatic controls, and if we want to nurse them really well, we need to find a person that's really skilled in pneumatic controls and do a bunch of work there, or we end up replacing that. So I would say in your head, the 250, 350,000 to work on controls in the short term, that might be something you consider, but you've been nursing it along. I mean, remember, you can always spend 0. When you talk about priority, those high priority items are line item 1 and 2, which is replace the existing HVAC system with a variable air volume system and replace the controls. If you go down a little bit lower, you'll see the electrical service and distribution needs work. That's a high priority. Also, a new voice activated fire alarm system. And a little bit further is removal of ceilings in the corridors and replacement during the HVAC work that goes along with the HVAC, some drywall and caulking there as well, and then some additional code compliance. When you look at those high priority items, they add up to about $6.2 million. You see that 6.183 at the very bottom there. Now you can pick and choose. What we did was we went over this with Tim, and we really wanted to, that's perfect there. Thank you. We wanted to kind of paint what we felt was an accurate picture. When we look at the moderate priority or priority 2 items, there's some ADA toilet conversions. You can see there on line item 3. Then you get down to line item 5, 6, and 7. Is replacing some wiring devices and branch circuits, a new generator, LED lighting and lighting controls, a new intercom clock system, and then there's roofing repairs and replacement, followed by window replacement. And those last 2 are pretty big line items there. All of the other, and so when you add those to high priority, that's about 3.15 million or 3.2 million. Now you're looking at a 9.3-ish million dollars between priorities 1 and 2. The low priority or priority 3 items include, I'm just trying to make sure I have my eyes on the right thing, sound system at the stage, some lighting and lighting controls in the multi-purpose room at the stage, demolition that goes with that, some ADA and other life safety work, adding a 2-stop elevator. You'll see that number, I think, looks similar to a number that I saw in your budget before. There's some site work and concrete work that could be done, masonry repairs, some doors, frames, and hardware work, and then we get down to flooring, painting, some gym padding and backstops and things like that, and specialties, as well as additional protection, some cleaning, and FF&E moving and things like that. So when you add that last bit on, is about 2.45 million or so. All that added up is almost 11.8 million to do what we call like long-term facilities maintenance projects on this building. So that allows you to compare what you would need to do there versus if you were to have other considerations for servicing those children that go to Buck. I know that's been a thing that's been discussed at the district for years, and this at least gives you a benchmark for what would happen if you wanted to keep Buck for the short term, keep Buck for an operation for a medium term, or keep it longer term. I'm hoping for the administration and the committee members that kind of summarizes what you were hoping to understand out of our review of Buck. I'm happy to take any questions.
Amy, and I'm just going to say, Joe Jones, I'm really glad that you emphasized the fact that that list is a roster of the larger maintenance projects. It's not going into an old building and renovating the space that we use. And, the board knows this, but it's important to just say it, and you said it, that, if you do compare this to putting a newer site into the mix, you get all of what you're talking about, obviously the improved backbone of a building, but you also get a chance to get fresher, cleaner, and newly designed instructional space. And that is an issue at Buck too, that we're not addressing through this piece of the project.
And the dollar value of that would be difficult for me to put on it. It's easy to say, here are these maintenance issues and the way that this looks over time, but Mr. Jones is absolutely right. And I can't speak to right now how curriculum is being taught at Buck and how it may be taught a little bit differently as it's taught, for example, at Tawanka with those house spaces, the great house spaces.
And then I'll just expand. You're right. That's a perfect example of something that we've been able to really maximize on the pods that we call in there, where the grade levels are all clustered and the teamwork that occurs grade by grade because of that extra space that's designed there. And then the other piece of this, and Don Irwin, when he comes here and he's looking at these old buildings, he's the one who's saying the same thing from the standpoint of just even the lack of space. If Brian Kern, the principal there, needs to have a parent meet with a team of teachers, pretty much he's abandoning his office and using the conference table that's in his inner office space because there was really no other available space for us to do that type of work. Again, does it work today? It works today, but we have, you, meaning the board, we have structural issues that this project here is addressing, but there's also these other issues that are out there as well. Just needs to be on the record as we look at a big project like this to know that that's the other piece of the equation that either has to get addressed, or we have to know that if we do this work, that other piece is still out there as a factor.
Damien, I got a whole host of questions. I'll try and limit them. First of all, we're talking about a building with 63,000 square feet. And we just built a building with 110,000 square feet. I think that goes directly to what, Mr. Jones, is talking about. I'm not saying any new building we would ever build in the future has to be 110,000 square feet. We would have to design it for what we think it is. But, you have some substantial costs in here. You're talking, biggest line item is the replace that existing HVAC system, which is the original system from 68 or 69. Those pneumatic controls go on top of that. That's not if we replace the existing controls. Can you explain that a little bit to me?
Yes. When we replace the HVAC system and we have to tear everything out, and really we're going everything goes. Whole system, boiler, chiller, piping, everything. So that pneumatic controls goes on top of that. Yes.
Okay.
And what you're seeing there, these are project costs. Okay. They're not just construction costs. It's all in.
Right.
So whether it's contingency or design fees and permits, et cetera, it's all in there and it's budgetary. I'm not telling you we can't do it for less than that.
Right. I understand.
What I am telling you is that the intention was that we broke out replacement of pneumatic controls just so that we had a target for that amount of money that might be spent if you were keeping the building longer and you wanted to do something with those controls.
Without replacing
without taking the big step of,
right.
Yes.
If I could jump in with the HVAC and the controls, from my experience on it, one of the issues, now remember that building, that HVAC system was somewhat, I'm going to call it experimental. It's always had issues. The people who understand how it works are long gone. There's fewer and fewer. That's just the basic system itself. Layer on top of that, if you're going to replace that with the VAV boxes and a more efficient boiler, maybe, and mechanical air conditioning, if you hang on to pneumatic controls as fantastic and wonderful as they are, that's the same problem. There's less and less parts out there for this equipment. I can tell you right now, I'm one of the few guys left who fully understand how it's supposed to work and who could maybe get parts for those kind of controls. And the more scarce we get, our labor cost goes up because it does. So, there's other things I'll throw in there. With the pneumatic control, you are limited. There's things it can't do for you. Night setbacks are complicated. Tracking outdoor temperature to kind of, ramp your system back you can get more finite control with digital is really what I'm getting to. You can also control it remotely where you can't really do that pneumatics without a lot of complication interface. Anyway, I'm looking at this saying that's always been kind of on the table. That system's been begging to be replaced.
All right. With the ADA toilets, are we under the provisions that once we start something there that we're going to have to make the entire building ADA compliant? How does that work under the GIZA? I forget from a few years ago.
One of the things that we are specific to say when we do these things is something that I said earlier that Mr. Jones jumped on and to help me out with was these are a series of maintenance projects. So because we're not doing renovations and we're not changing walls around, et cetera, we try and keep ourselves to the maintenance side of things where we can do ADA work, but we try not to push ourselves into the place where if you do so much work, you're going to have to do at least 20% that is improvement of ADA. So
Okay.
there is a way to modulate that and control it. And the simplest way for me to explain it is when you do a series of maintenance projects, as opposed to something that is more akin to a renovation, you keep yourself from being pushed further into having to make everything ADA compliant, as opposed to doing a few things to help ADA compliance along in the building.
All right. The doors and frame and hardware, is that all the doors, all the classroom doors? Or are you talking about the exterior doors? Do you have that broken out separately?
I believe that's classroom doors.
That's classroom, not the exterior.
Yeah, in probably we should have in window replacement, any exterior doors would be in that window replacement number. That's where those would be, exterior doors and windows. We didn't note that, but that's where they would be.
Okay.
Can I just jump in and float something out that keeps making my head explode? So if we went all in and did all priorities, we'd be spending $12 million, and that would just be some big maintenance projects, number one. Number two, that would do nothing, I'll say, to benefit the educational flow of the building. That's the second point. And the third point that keeps running through my mind, and was discussed the other night, is the bond markets are at an all-time low right now. So I'm just floating those three items out there. Because I'm just wondering if now's the time to look at another project.
Well, if you're thinking that, and I'm not saying you're wrong, we built Tawaka for $31 million. Now, of course, that's going on almost 4 years old now. I mean, Mr. Spar, in today's market, do you have any idea what, and I'm not saying we would build a duplicate of Tawaka, but using Tawaka as a model, what do you think today's market, the increase would be over that 31 we spent there?
Well, my understanding of construction inflation over the last several years, let's stay simple with it and say it's 2% a year. And I think I would go back, and I might have that number a little bit bigger because of when we bid it, not when we finished it. So when I think about what Tawaka costs and what this would be if it were the same size, you know, depending on what the land, how the land is laid out, and what we would want to do with it, you know, you're not going to get up to $40 million. But I think that very quickly you would want to put 10% or so on your hard costs and your soft costs. So you're going to add another $3 million to your 30 million, and you're going to add, what was soft cost? Maybe 6. You're going to add 6 to that. So you're going to add $4 million to your what was probably an all-in of
34, I think.
34, something like that. So, you know, you're going to be more than 35 and less than 40. I don't know, call it 37, 38 million.
All right.
Do it for less. Well, I mean, if we just use simple numbers and said that you shrink a building and you save $200 a square foot, just for easy math's sake, for every 10,000 square feet you take out, you drop $2 million. So if you were at 110 and you want to go to just 100,000 square feet, you know, it's probably $2 million less.
Plus, we'd be borrowing at a lower interest rate than we did 5 years ago.
Well, that's certainly true.
All right, just
Well, I mean, it's something to bounce around. I'm not saying we do it, but it's definitely something to bounce around. You know, there are lots of other things we'd have to investigate, but I think it's time. Pearl Buck is the last school that hasn't been touched. And we have to make a decision whether we do the maintenance, we just go for a full rehab, which is going to be a different issue. Giza can generally be done while the school is open and during the summer months. You do a full renovation, that's a different issue.
Mhm.
Okay, if we do a full renovation, or do we look to the next step and try and continue elementary buildings that expand the educational floor plan? But I think it's time we have to make a decision on Pearl Buck, whether we make it this year or next year. We got to do something. We got to do something, with that building.
Hey, Damon, may I ask, the electrical service and distribution, you have that as a high priority. Is that strictly tied in with an upgrade of the HVAC system, or as it stands now?
I want to make sure that we characterize that correctly, and I think I understand your question. We're not telling you that this is an emergency priority. We're telling you you're going to want to do it, and you're going to need to do it with that work, but we're not seeing something there that we're saying to you, oh, you need to take care of this right away.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That's exactly my question, yes.
Thank you. Good.
So if to look at this another way, if this property, we did move on from this property, but of course we would want to do what we did with most of the other buildings, is try to lease it. At a minimum, we're looking at probably fixing the HVAC controls, because you got that marked in your notes as similar dollar for repairs, right? And probably updating the wiring and branch circuits in there, and the new electrical service. So, that'd be like $1.5 million, just in rough numbers, maybe $1.3 million. So.
Yeah, so I would want to look at that closely. I think that at Lower South, the issue was not having air conditioning. And the issue isn't that we don't have cooling. The issue is that it doesn't function well and it's difficult to keep operating properly.
Right.
So, the amount of money that you might consider putting in is certainly something that's modulated. I don't know. I don't think there are any immediate roof sections that necessarily have to be done. I think Mr. Traska could speak to that. But the answer is, yeah, there's some money over $1 million to be spent. It sure as heck isn't $6.2 million. What do you do? Is there a different, air conditioning system that or cooling that you would want to put in to try and be more cost effective? A variable air volume system is a great and efficient system, but it isn't like putting those units in the classrooms like we did everywhere else. Those are cheaper.
Right. So
you could modulate and upgrade to allow the building to be used in a different way. And I do my best for Neshaminy School District to provide a conservative case, if not, a bad case, because I don't want prices to go up. Right. Have these meetings. So you could work those numbers down for whatever reason you want to, but certainly in the case of wanting to lease the building to someone else and bring it up to a level that would be acceptable, you would modulate that to something less than the high priority total one over $1 million.
Right. That'd be a different way of looking at it.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we were going that route, we would probably want to wait to see who the tenant was and see what tenant improvements and TI we have to do.
Right.
As opposed to just doing something and then having them say we don't really need that or want that.
From the administration's point of view, what Joe had mentioned. What is, I mean, I've only been in that building a handful of times. And I know it was built in the late 60s when there was a lot of experimentation with the layout of buildings. Today, the buildings are going more to a traditional layout. I mean, what is so different about that building that makes the layout, just hard to not only to navigate, but to have that collaboration that you have better in some of our other buildings where you have the more standard hallway structure?
Steve, I'm trying to think of the best example. It's a circular building, and so even when you're in a hallway, you're seeing like a neighbor on either side of you, but then you just keep walking around and around, and you sometimes come back to where you started. You don't even realize you're back at the starting spot again. Rob's shaking his head. Rob, were you a student in that building?
Yeah, I went to Pearlbrook from 1970 to 1975. That's exactly right. It's just like above the library at Neshaminy High School. It is a circular hallway, and you can't see. It's a very odd experience going in there now as an educator.
Yeah.
So it's basically 4 separate areas,
Right.
upstairs, downstairs, on both of those circles. If you were going to make a big high school, you might want to do it that way to separate all the grades. I don't know that you want to do it with an elementary school. So there is no open space. If you think of Tawanka is the optimal learning environment. The other thing missing is you think you're driving a 1970s my dad's Monte Carlo down 95. There's no cup holders, there's no seat belts, there's no airbags. That's kind of what Buck is. And even though we're going to strap all this on, and I'm sure Damon's got some good stuff in there as far as protection, it's just not the same. It's just not the same.
Right.
Go ahead, Rob.
Question one is the actual campus. If I'm not mistaken, it backs up to commercial.
Yes.
Oh, it does? Yeah, that's right.
does.
It
It
does.
does.
Because we used to sneak through the fence to get in the Roosevelt Drive-In. So I know that's commercial back there. So it might have more value both for a leaser and to possibly get rid of the property. You'd have to work with Middletown, but that's an option as well. I guess my question on these 28 items, soup to nuts, Damon, what's it look like getting done as we run education at Buck? You said summer and not bothering kids. That seems like a heck of a lot of work for a summer and not bothering kids.
Well, if you told me you wanted to do all this work, I would say to you, let's not bother kids. Let's get in and work nights before summer. Then let's finish everything up that we can in the summer. We have we've done this much work in a summer in a building.
Okay.
We could stagger this in a way that we wouldn't impact the kids. But if you do more than this, and I'm not sure who was mentioning it, but they were right on. I just didn't happen to look at the screen to see who was speaking. But if you do anything more than this, you're not going to get away with not moving children around and
Right.
not having temporary facilities or things that cost money and disrupt the educational process. We can do this on shoulder months and then with the summer because we've done it, before in other buildings. But you remember that a lot of the work is if you look at this whole thing right here, roofing is all up on the roof. The windows pop out and pop back in. They're not as complicated as other things that we've had to do. And you don't have, that you look at resilient flooring. If we put resilient flooring everywhere, that's a big schedule eater. If you do all the work and then you save your resilient flooring to do the last summer, you're not disrupting the kids. So even though it's only $500,000, that's a big, huge disruption. So can we do this without disruption to the educational process? You bet. If you start to go to renovations or anything that's close to a renovation, you're going to run into exactly that problem.
But that's over 2 summers though, correct, Amy?
Well, I would, the only thing that gives me trepidation over in doing it one summer here is the resilient flooring. If it doesn't take a lot to get all that flooring finished, I would just ultimately want to see what the district selected to know that we could do it in shoulder months and the summer and shoulder months. It appears to me that we can now. If you think about some of the schools that we did at the beginning of the program, we did this much work in one of those schools in the summertime.
I think it was Sandburg.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
You're right. Sandburg Schweitzer.
Yeah. You know, what I find kind of ironic is, you know, I walk into Fertibar Elementary, which was built in the late 50s. And it pretty much has that pod type environment. Got the central hallway, got 2 houses that you go down. You know, now they don't have the big common space that, you know, Tawanka has. But, you know, that's pretty much, you know, the basic layout of Tawanka. You got the big hallway, you got the pods, and what makes the pod so special is you got that extra community room and you got that extra community space. So, you know, we went through the 60s and 70s, and buildings like Heckman, Pearl Buck, and Maple Point for that point were built in this new modern concept, and it's proven not to be very efficient in delivering education. Now we're going back to the way, you know, they pretty much designed the buildings in the 50s and before that. So
But
it's kind of ironic.
they look cool, Steve.
They look cool.
So you get lost walking in that circle.
Yeah. The one times I was in Pearl Buck, I did get lost.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other?
Oh, I got one question. It's kind of like on this topic, but a little different. You know, the government's giving out, you know, lots of money now, and I know FEMA has programs. Do public school districts qualify for any FEMA programs, Damien, that you know of?
Yeah, and you're. It's funny that you asked that. You're a little earlier than I have the ability to tell you the details, but we are actually working kind of as I'll say kind of a vendor for FEMA in helping school districts to recover, to figure out how to do the accounting and start to be prepared to recover money. There's going to be some immediate stuff for FEMA now, and then there's going to be a longer term program. And I don't have that here to talk to you about tonight. I can tell you that we're getting ready to roll that out. And it was something that I was going to reach out to Tim Traska and Mr. Irwin and find out if they were interested in hearing about what it is that we're doing. Because we're really starting out with helping our existing and long-term clients with it. And, you know, Neshaminy reaches back to me about as far as my memory goes in school construction. So that's something that I was going to bring up with the administration if everyone here is interested in me doing that. And I'm hoping to do that in the next week or two.
I would think we would be open to that. Marty?
Yeah, there's no reason, because especially since the government's involved, and I know personally they did such a good job with the PPP program, I'm sure it'll be really rolled out really well.
Hey, but Damien, I have one more question on this page.
Yes, sir.
I don't see any costs related to the abatement that would be for hazardous material, including asbestos.
Yeah, I actually had that conversation about anything that's left to be done in there. And I thought we were double checking this with Tim the other day when I was doing my final update. And while I don't have it lined out in there, we do have it contained within the line items that are project costs. So I'm saying abatement of what is required to occur in there is included. There's some transite panels, there's some flooring, and I think there's some insulation.
Yeah, which would impact schedule as well.
It would. It partly depends, and like I said, the flooring is the thing that would give me most concern, depending on when that got started and how easy it would be for us to do flooring everywhere and stay out of our own way to get the project done.
The only reason I bring it up, it's such a hot issue right now, particularly in the Philadelphia area, where
Yes.
the schools have been closed and parents and teachers are getting all excited about being exposed.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with Tim and with our team to double check and confirm that we do have the money in these project costs to cover the abatement needed. Yes. Glad you asked that. Thank you.
Damien, one more question. With our other Giza projects, you had an energy analysis. Have you gotten to the point with this presentation that you can provide us with the energy savings over the 20-year term, or however we did that before?
We could provide you with the energy savings over that term, but before I even go too far with that, I would say this. Tim, do you have if we assume that the building is using, $1.15 a year per square foot on energy or something like that, do you think that's out of line just for this discussion?
Oh, no.
I mean, if we make that assumption or $1.20, let's say we save 20 cents a square foot, because if we're operating under $1 a square foot, we're doing pretty good, right? So if you do that, you're talking about $13,000 a year times 20 years is $260,000.
Right.
So your energy savings here is, I don't know how it's ever $500,000 over 20 years,
right?
But it might be $200,000 over 20 years.
I mean, it's minimal, but it's something.
That's correct.
It definitely would generate some savings.
It's better than and that's not including the maintenance costs that you would avoid.
Right.
Better than the other buildings because you already have cooling here.
Right.
The other buildings, we had to account for adding the cooling.
Right.
But so it's something, but it's not. It's a fraction of the project cost. If
Marty,
even if you just took it with the HVAC system, it's still a fraction of the project cost.
Right.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah. When we were talking Tuesday night about some financing options, and I had brought it up that we'll be talking about this today. Yep. You had made mentions that, we wouldn't finance it that way in response to one of my statements. I mean, you're the CPA, you got a quick mind. Do you got any idea what it would cost to finance $12 million over 25 or 30 years at current rates? Current rates are about 2%.
Well, truth be told,
right,
I wouldn't finance $12 million in this project. I would look at doing something new. That's what I would look at. I think it's a better use of our funds. It's probably ballpark, I don't know, $600,000 or $700,000 for the 12 million. So if you did 34 million, multiply that times 3, so 2 million. I think it's a better use of our funds. We would have an immediate utility savings if we didn't have the building. So we wouldn't have to worry about $13,000 over 20 years.
Right.
I think, and looking at Tim's long-range projects and all that, it may make sense to get something on the agenda for the next meeting at maybe looking at doing an overall project where we maybe do float a bond, do something new at Maple Point, and roll in some of those bigger projects into a financing.
Well, I guess that's for May 5th.
No, that was facilities. That one.
Oh.
Right?
Well, I mean, at money at 2%, I mean, on infrastructure projects, which are one-time costs, even though they're expensive, but you're spreading them out over 25, 30 years, you can't, look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
No, I agree.
2% is an unbelievable number.
And my response on Tuesday night was, I took it that you were saying we were going to take $12 million out of operations to fund.
No.
And that's why I was saying, no, there's another way to do it. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we've talked a couple times tonight about the educational flow in Tawanka.
Right.
And we're talking about the principal having to move somewhere else to meet parents here.
Right.
Damien's just talking about this stuff that's structural. We're not even talking about improving the education flow, which then that adds another $7 million. Now we're up to a $20 million project. Right. I mean, what we're doing is, and I'm saying this for John's sake, we're doing another high school project.
Right.
So. So I think we look at next steps to maybe kick it around, possibly something new. I think we start to get a little more serious. Maybe it's going to cost a little bit of money, but start looking at some soft costs, some architectural type stuff and all that. And, you know, rates are down 2 points from where they were this time last year. So,
Yeah. And we
they're
got,
not gonna stay down there forever.
and we got Tawaka had historic lows, and now they're half of that.
Yeah, they're hyper historic lows.
Right.
So I mean, my suggestion is.
Well, maybe we
grateful
need
for
to have
Damien for presenting this, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think we should probably have a more in-depth discussion with administration.
Yeah.
On a way to move forward on a parallel path.
Yeah.
At least that way we can gain more information about how we would proceed. Because, like I said, it's time. Something needs to be done at that building.
Yeah.
You know.
Agreed. All right.
All right.
Mr. Irwin, next.
Yes, I'm trying to get my screen back if I can.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you, Damien.
You're very welcome.
You got Steve back.
Where'd I go?
I don't know, you're on my screen now.
Oh, okay.
That brings us back to the closing of the meeting. We have any other topics from the committee members?
I have none.
I have none.
Mr. Peritano?
I can't think of any.
Mr. Sherrill, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. And any other from the administration? Mr. Jones, Mr. McGee?
No,
Is there anybody from the public there?
you make sure we go to the public.
Yes.
I have 3 questions regarding the bus replacement plan.
How you doing, John?
Good, how are you?
All right.
So my three questions are, 2 of them are specific to specific buses. Last March, bus 111 was on the plan to be replaced this school year. It has fallen into the 2021 school year, according to the posted documents on board docs. Was wondering why that fell into this school year. And then the other specific bus question is bus 6 was on the replacement list, and it's not on the replacement list on tonight's agenda. And what are we doing with bus 6? Because quite honestly, and Don Cryer could probably tell you better than that if he's still here, that we may have gotten a month out of bus 6 this year. And I don't know if it is actually replaceable or the plan is it for it to be scrapped.
Actually, bus 6 has already been replaced. The old bus 6 is sitting in the back of the lot waiting to be picked up by the dealer. We did get a new bus 6 this year. We lost the transmission in it last year. That's why we replaced it this year. 111 is actually on this year's list to be done. I believe it was moved up because it lost injectors.
Okay. And my final question is regarding the grant. Is this grant specifically removing 10 older diesel burning buses to replace with allegedly fuel efficient new diesel buses, or does this plan include the replacement with LP buses?
It does not require the LP.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have. Appreciate it.
Any other comments from the public?
That grant's just to get the supposedly older, dirtier burning diesels off the road. I understand it.
Correct.
Okay, guys, our next meeting then is scheduled for, and I've lost my place, scheduled for May 20th.
20th.
And
I'm
I guess,
assuming that'll be virtual too.
I didn't want to put a physical location on it at this point, only because I don't want to have to, try to explain why we're not meeting again.
No, I got it.
Physically.
Okay.
So I just put the date, and if we have a place, we'll announce that. We'll go back to our schedule as it would have been on the regular meeting day on May 20th, which I took that off only because I didn't want to lay that marker down.
No, I got it. Understood.
Without any other comments, we'll adjourn.
What are we virtually touring next month there?
We did the high school library tonight.
All right.
Thank you all.
everyone. Thanks.
Good to see you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later.
Carol.